What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. Boy, did we have a good slate. Another good slate, 2 in a row in the association, which gives us 2 great games to talk about and deep dive about. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, we're on a heater right now, man, with the NBA. They're just giving us gems night after night.
2 great nights of games. There's no question about it, man. So yeah, and now we got this show, and then we go to the weekend, and then I've got to go outside and take down my Christmas decorations. I'm the last house in the community that still has Christmas decorations up, my lights and stuff. So I got to get to that after the show. But first, we're going to talk about what we watched last night. And look, going in, you know, on paper, you're going, okay, the second game probably looks like that could be legit. You know, Warriors Nuggets, that's definitely going to be entertaining with Curry and Jokic going at it. First game, you don't know what you're going to get. We ended up with that's one of the best doubleheaders like I've watched all year. So I can't wait to dive into these games.
So true, man. It was 5 hours of good basketball, or at least entertaining basketball. I don't know if it was good. Part of what made it good it wasn't great for portions of it. But we have an hour to get through a lot of storylines. So this is one of those days where there's just so much to talk about. But first, we are presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code ALLNBA, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Now, on this point, before we get into these, I did want to ask you this one, Legs, just off the top. We've had 2 great nights in a row. I'm looking at the weekend slate, which we're going to get to later on. It's under-discussed, I think, how many good teams there are in the NBA. And I think this is why we're having so many good nights. There might be fewer great teams, but there are a lot of good teams. And so when you get to some matchups, you can get a game like the Spurs with Wembanyama and the Bucks, who are at the top, top and the bottom of each conference, and yet it's still a good game. And there's a lot of things I'm frustrated with the NBA, but the talent is there right now, so that on any given night, you might have 3-4 good matchups. And I think that this trend is real. Us talking about another good night in the association, I think it's real because there's just so much talent in the league.
Yeah. I think that's true about the teams, but I think even more true than that, there are just more dudes that can light up the scoreboard than we've ever had. You fill a box score. And that's really what this is about now. You're sitting down to watch games that, look, it's a long year, man. And some nights you got 7, 8, 10 game slates and you're sitting down and maybe 6 or 7 of those don't look great on paper, but you tune in because you want to see a particular player or whatever. And you end up getting so thoroughly entertained with the shot making. Now, sometimes I think the defense leaves a little bit to be desired, but
sure,
you can't deny that there are more guys that can generate their own offense or make shots from deep or make contested shots. There's more of those in the league than ever, and that's why we're getting these incredible nights. And big numbers are being put up, but it can be so entertaining when it's not interrupted by free throws and there's actual flow where the ball change ends of the floor 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. I felt like for a while there, for a few years in the NBA, I felt like every night, man, everything was like you're barely getting more than 2 trips without a whistle. And I feel like the last couple nights, some of these games I've watched with these big numbers, I feel like part of the reason the numbers are up is because I feel like there's just better flow, man. The ball's changing the ends of the floor, and there's so many shot makers on the court. That's when the game is its most entertaining. Yeah. And I tell you, these last 2 nights have been about as entertaining back-to-back nights as I've had all year watching the league, man. And last night, 2 just absolute awesome finishes and incredible talent.
Yeah. I love the point about foul shooting because I'm 100% with you. It poisons any exciting game. But, Legs, because I'm a West Coast guy, I'm in Denver. after a game like last night with the Nuggets, it's such an exciting one. I wake up this morning in preparation for the show, and I'm scrolling to listen to shows and see what everybody's talking about. Everybody went to bed before the West Coast game wrapped up, so I wasn't hearing shows. We were going to start with Wembanyama and do a deep dive, but instead we're going to start with this Nuggets Warriors one, just because I haven't seen a lot of conversation online and in the various podcasts. So let's start with it, because it was a heck of a finish and a heck of a game. Just to kind of recap, the close game throughout the first half, both teams kind of going back and forth. Nuggets started to pull away a little bit going into the half, but the Warriors completely dominated that third quarter, 44-24. Denver got no stops in that third quarter. And then to open the fourth quarter, it was more of the same. They built an 18-point lead. When Michael Malone, the Nuggets play tonight, so they're on the front end of a back-to-back going west back home to Denver, a very tough thing to do. And I thought they might throw in the towel, down 18 with like 7 minutes to go or something like that. And I know a lot of fans were calling for it. Okay, it's not your night. Get ready for tomorrow night. Michael Malone goes all in. He puts the starters back in. He says, we're making a push. And the Nuggets storm back in this game they closed the game on was it 25-4 run? Yeah, 25-4 run over the last 6.5 minutes or so. Just an incredible close for the Nuggets and a collapse for the Warriors. What stood out to you about this game, whether you want to go straight to the ending or something else earlier on in the game?
Well, first, I got to go full disclosure, and you and I have talked about this. So sometimes, so I can enjoy family time, get my son to bed, whatever. I'll DVR games, and I'll watch them after he goes to bed, right? And so I did that, and I got through the entire Bucks Spurs. And then I started getting a little bit sleepy, so I watched the first half of Denver Golden State. It was a pretty tight game at halftime. I went to bed. Woke up, knowing I got to watch the second half this morning. Yeah. But I'm scrolling through scores, and I saw the score. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't wait to see this. Then Jokic buzzer beater is going to be great. And then I start watching it, and at one point, I literally froze it. I hit pause, and I was like checking the date of the game. I'm like, wait a second, is this the game from last night? The Nuggets are going to win this game. Somebody's telling me right now, the game I'm watching, Denver is going to win this game. Because they just look like, number one, just look like Golden State was in such rhythm offensively, as good as I've seen all year. They built a huge lead, and it just looked like, man, how is Denver going to have enough time to come back from 18? It just didn't look like it was going to add up. Then you start to watch it. A couple things happen, Adam. It's a combination of things, clearly. One is Warriors start missing shots that they were making. I mean, they had some clean looks that they bottomed out that they did not make to stop the run. And look, when a team's going on a big run, having to make a comeback that big, it only takes one timely shot to interrupt the momentum, and you're going to hold on to win. So they missed some of those. They also had terrible, I thought, execution and lack of poise on some of those possessions that let Denver have extra possessions to get back into the game. And then finally, it's Denver, man. It's just Denver making shots and making plays. Aaron Gordon was tremendous. Peyton Watson had a huge corner three and some other plays, and you've been raving about him for a while. And then Jokic, what he does. So a combination of all three things was like a perfect storm of how to lose a game in which you've got a big lead. And this might be the most gut punch loss the Warriors have had all year. To beat a team that good can give you such confidence, especially when you play that well. And instead, you leave the building feeling the way you did. It just didn't add up for me after 42 minutes, really, of being in total control and then walking out of there with a loss. I can't imagine what Steve Kerr and Curry and Thompson and those guys felt like leaving that arena.
If we stay with the positives real quick for Golden State, because you're right. I mean, they had 35 assists last night, which is a ton. To get 30 is a good night, passing the ball, even for a team like Golden State that shares the ball well. But to get 35 and to shoot 42% from three, 15 of 36, that's the formula typically for a Warriors win. And I was impressed with that aspect of them. You've been very high on Pajensky, and he is a guy that plays that system very well, just understands how to make the next pass, how to create opportunities off of scrambled defense and different things. And they were doing it. The ball was popping for them last night. And specifically, these two teams played last week. And one of the things that stood out to me, even though Denver won the last time, was Kuminga, Wiggins, and Dario Saric. All three of those guys used their size against Denver's guards. So in those staggered minutes, when they're playing against the bench or incomplete starter groups, those guys were posting up Reggie Jackson, Christian Brown, Jamal Murray, and having a ton of success. and they had a ton of success last night, but they went away from it in the close of this game. Kuminga, only 19 minutes. He has 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, was a +6, 5 of 7 shooting, didn't close this game and was not on the court during that entire collapse. And I thought that was a very strange thing because they had found a formula against Denver that was working, and they went against even that formula to close with, I guess, a lineup, Kerr is a little bit more comfortable with. What did you make of that specific dynamic?
Yeah, no, it was kind of a head scratcher. It looked to me like the Warriors, as the lead started to dwindle, and once it got like into single digits, and now there's clearly enough time for Denver to make this complete comeback. It looked to me like Golden State started playing differently offensively, almost like not to lose the game. And I thought they got too deep into the clock on too many possessions. And when they were rolling in the third quarter, everything was happening so fast as they came up the court, and they were making great passes from the top of the key. They were running a guard split action. Curry got rolling with some step backs. They were hitting the corner threes. Just basically, I think they played a perfect quarter. The third quarter was as well as a team can play offensively in this league. Yep. And in the fourth quarter, I felt like they just got too cautious. And next thing you know, like they're getting late into the clock and they're taking really tough contested shots. They had a couple of bunnies they missed at the rim. They did miss a couple wide open looks, but for the most part, you could sense that they started to feel the weight of this. And Denver, look, at that point, you're playing with house money a little bit. Like, even if you don't come all the way back, you make that a one-possession game, you end up losing. I think Mike Malone still pats those guys on the back for sticking with it. He had really complimentary things about his own team after the game because he said at no point did anybody kind of hang their head or just, like you said, let's get on to the next game. They just kept playing possession by possession. Even if you lose, I think Mike Malone's happy if it ends up being a close game. But now they start to taste it. And Golden State got a little bit too cautious, and they felt it, and Denver grabbed it. It was such a strange turnaround, man, to turn it all the way around. Like, typically, Adam, you see these kind of games, and they come up like one possession short, right? And the team that ends up winning by 5 because they get a couple free throws late, and it's like a 5-point game. And you look at the box score, and you don't really know how it played out. Rarely do you come all the way back and finish it and take it across the finish line. Look, it took a miraculous shot by Jokic to avoid overtime, and maybe lose it overtime. But I'm still honestly kind of in shock at what I watched. I just can't believe Denver pulled that off last night.
Well, this comment from Sky Falcon 5 is, kind of a point I'm hinting at here, which is that seems like Steve Kerr only trusts the old guys and, pods. And I think you're right. If you look at how they closed this game, it was Steph and Clay. It was Kevon Looney and Andrew Wiggins. This is like the core guys there. And then Pods, who's the young guy who's earned his trust. And I wonder, when you talked about you got a little tight, you lose the rhythm, I wonder if there is a bit of a feeling when the game starts to slip and the coach goes to this isn't the lineup that was working, but it's the guys I trust. And I just wonder if there's a little bit of message sending. Like, it felt like not a panic, but you're not going to the thing that was working. We're going to the thing that we think is going to hold on to the very end. Just hold on for a little bit. And as you mentioned, they weren't playing with confidence, with rhythm, with flow, or execution. So I think there's something to the coach sometimes sends a message to his team inadvertently. But if we go to the other side, you're right that this was a collapse. Anytime there's a 25-4 run to close a game, it's both a great close and a collapse. But Denver, one of the reasons I believed in them last year, Legs, I can't remember what they were, 14th in defensive rating or 18th, something like that. Not a number typically that you would say this is a championship team. But why I believed in them is in fourth quarters and in the clutch, they were always elite defensively. And I always thought that's what they're going to be when it matters because that's winning time. Last night, yes, it was a collapse, but the Nuggets went to championship mode, and they keep doing this. They have not been super impressive all year, but they are impressive in the winning moments over and over and over again. And I just thought Denver knew exactly what to do every time down court in the clutch, and they made some lucky shots, but at the same time, they put themselves in position to do that. And that's why no matter what happens this year, it's the same Nuggets.
Yeah, they definitely influenced the last 6 minutes of that game defensively. This wasn't just about the Warriors coming down and throwing the ball over to Jim carelessly or just missing wide open looks. A lot of it is because the pressure got turned up. And one of the reasons you get deep into the clock, like I said, and they had a number of possessions where they're releasing the ball right before the shot clock goes off, is because of the defensive pressure and the fact that they're taking away space and just the collective will to want to win a game in which you have been that outplayed over the previous 12 to 18 minutes. Very few teams are going to muster that in that moment. It just shows they got great leadership. They're very connected as a team. They're exceptionally well coached, goes without saying. And their defense in that moment, their switchability, their continue to fight despite the fact that they were getting torched in the third quarter, the first half of the fourth quarter. It says a lot about them and who they are, man. And this is, I don't know if this is their best win of the year. You've seen every one of their games start to finish. Is this the best win the Nuggets have had all year?
No, because it was such a bad third quarter. It was a great story. It was a great story how they came back. It was their best comeback. But it wasn't the best game all around. I mean, I do not think the Nuggets were very impressive. Even in the first half, I don't think they were very impressive. But it was one of those ones, like I said, championship DNA, where they just knew, okay, there's a tiny window. If we really lock in, what happens? And their defense was outstanding. Their execution on offense was outstanding. Their free throw shooting was outstanding. And that brings me to Aaron Gordon Aaron Gordon's had something of a down year. It's talked about this on shows, a little tired. Mentally, are you back into it because of the short offseason? He started to lock in about 10, 15 games ago. Over the last 10 games, Aaron Gordon is averaging 17 points per game, 6 rebounds, and his shooting splits are 65% from the field, 46% from three, about 2 a game, but still 46% from three. And the big one, 77.5% from the foul line. This is a guy that was below 50% for large portions from the foul line this year. I think he locked in. He, to me, is, you're going to get Jokic every single night. You're going to get Murray most nights and certainly in the clutch. Aaron Gordon is that guy that when he's locked in, that's when they're a championship team. And over these last 10 games, the Nuggets are on a run over the last 10 games. I think 9-1 or 8-2 over the last 10. Aaron Gordon has been the difference maker because he seems to be back and locked in and sort of over that early season hump.
He was sensational last night. I mean, he was physical against a team that he could be physical against. Their best 3 players went 32 for 49 from the field. You're not going to lose games in this league typically, and they almost did, but you're not going to lose games when you go 32 for 49. Your 3 best players, all 3 of those guys showed up in a big way. Then they got a huge contribution out of Peyton Watson. He was great, and again, it made some big plays for them late. His length defensively, I think, is something they're going to continue to go to. Very impressive that they were able to come back and pull that off. And it's demoralizing. I think Mike Malone's look at the end of that game said it all. You rarely see Mike Malone that giddy in the moment, right? I mean, look, it was a shocking play. Jokic hits a 40-footer off the glass, to win the game. But the pie-eating grin on Mike Malone's face, man, as he went onto the court, it was like finding his guys as they're swarming Jokic. That was a good moment, man, because, NBA coaches, it's 82. They're all a grind. It's stressful. And most times you're just kind of like on to the next one. Good win. You kind of wave to the other coach or go down if you know him well, give him a hug, and you get a great game, and then you're on to the next game. You don't see guys really in the moment in the regular season sort of bask in the moment and with that kind of happiness for their guys. That's what Mike Malone expressed last night. He was just happy to see those guys celebrating like that, and how can you not love Jokic and everybody's climbing on him? And the look on Malone's face, I thought said a lot, man, about how much he loves his team and just how happy he was for them that they were able to have that moment in a building like that. When typically you fall down that big, you're not coming back.
Yeah. You have to have those when you're like the Nuggets. The regular season is somewhat boring to the Nuggets right now. And nights like last night are things that kind of give you that shot in the arm of like, oh yeah, that's right. It's kind of fun to be great. It's kind of special. Let me ask you real quick, because I've been asking you about Peyton Watson a lot. I'm sure you've only seen him a handful of times because he's not a guy that plays, he's a new guy. He's just breaking in. But Michael Malone has gone to him over Michael Porter a handful of times over the last couple of weeks, which is very, for such a young player, basically a rookie. What do you see out of him, and why do you think Michael Malone trusts him in the clutch? He hit a clutch 3 from the corner last night. Are you buying his offense, and why do you think Michael Malone trusts him in those spots?
His offense has come a long way since the beginning of the season, and you're right. It's obvious that Mike Malone really has entrusted him a lot. I think his confidence pours out And I think Mike Malone senses that. He's a very confident kid. And I don't know that it's going to be necessarily a pattern. I mean, I think Michael Porter Jr. was a starter on a championship team. So I think maybe it's going to be, night to night kind of who he feels like has it going a little bit more. Michael Porter had a very quiet night. He didn't really get a lot of looks. He wasn't really heavily involved in the game. So I think Michael Malone just felt like Watson had more momentum as that lead started to be erased. He was a part of that. And I just feel like sometimes coaches are going to get caught up in, hey, this group is doing it right now. Let's stick with it. And Peyton Watson got the opportunity to close that out. And I think it's going to be something that's going to be a night-by-night sort of basis. But he is continuing to grow. And it's phenomenal for Denver because you wondered where the added depth was going to come from with what they lost. And it's such a key guy in Brown. Right. And you wondered where it was going to come from. And now you've got a guy like Watson who's right before your eyes getting better and better. And it makes you wonder, man, like, where's this guy going to be in 3-4 months when they get ready to try to defend their title? There's no telling like how he might be consistently doing what he did last night, 19 and 19 minutes, and just his imprint was all over the place in that comeback. That might start to become more of the norm. And it's just a good thing for Denver because they've got another player with length that they can play in Michael Porter's minutes if they choose to.
Do you think it's an issue? I mean, Michael Porter was 3 of 6 last night, 2 of 5 from 3. I thought he was shooting the ball well, but 6 shots for the minutes he plays. Do you see that as an issue? I know a lot of Nuggets fans watch this and are like, why doesn't Mike get more opportunities? He seems to always make them.
Well, here'll be my take on that. And you might be more equipped to answer this than me because you're just following him so closely and all the coverage associated with the team, right? And you're paying attention to like all of the post-game pressers and like all that. I'm not as tuned into that team as much as you are. Here's to answer your question. It only becomes a problem if the player makes it a problem.
Right.
And if Michael Porter doesn't make it a problem, it's not. That's really what it comes down to. If he is, and even last night, look, and some guys, and I got a list of guys. I've seen it. They're out of a game when their team is making a run and they don't look super thrilled about it, right? It's kind of selfish mentality. They get pouty about it. And there's guys that play in the All-Star game that act like this sometimes. It's crazy. But I was watching that last night and it looked to me, Michael Porter was up with those dudes as they were making that comeback and he was genuinely happy, big smile on his face. And he's being a good teammate. So unless he gets pouty or changes demeanor or makes a comment after the game that kind of raises an eyebrow, if none of that happens, if he's okay with it, then the Nuggets are going to be okay with it. And now if I'm Michael Malone and I've got a player that's that talented offensively with that kind of shooting stroke, as the coach, I know we won the game, great, but I got to know why he only got 6 shots. So when I look at the film, I got to try to figure that out because that's not something you want happening repeatedly because now he is going to have a problem at some point. But in kind of like a one-off game scenario like that, went with a different group for the comeback. You didn't get a lot of shots tonight, not your night, championship team. He handled it very well. I don't think there's an issue.
Yeah, he's handled this well really for the last year and this year. He's a guy that I think the injuries have given him perspective, but at the same time, I think the Nuggets would be a little better if they found another extra shot or two for him just because he's such a good shot maker and he changes the way the defense looks at you. All right, let's go to break because on the other side, we have to get to the other great game that happened last night. We have to talk about Wembanyama, who had one of his better games of his career to date, going up against Giannis, and maybe it was a little bit of a preview of the future of Wembanyama. I'll ask you that on the other side. But first, our presenting sponsor, the company making this show happen for you guys, DraftKings Sportsbook. They've got that great deal right now where new customers can bet $5 and get $150 instantly in bonus bets. And if that weren't good enough, you also score an NBA League Pass subscription for the rest of the season. That's right. Not only do you get a no-sweat bet where you put $5 up and whether it wins or loses, you get $150 instantly in bonus bets. You also get a League Pass subscription for the rest of the year. So check that out. It's an incredible deal, but only when you use promo code ALLNBA. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ALLNBA. Get that great deal only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code ALLNBA. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, must be 21 or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms. Also want to tell you guys about the Game Time app. If you're going to a game or a concert or an event anytime in the next couple months, you're going to want to download the Game Time app to make sure you get the absolute best deal on wherever you're going. I've used this app to buy and sell tickets to concerts that I've had. I've used it to buy tickets to games. You go on that. Sometimes you'll find like a midweek game. You're like, what am I going to do tonight? I got some extra time. I'm going to sit and watch TV. Just open up the Game Time app and look. Take a peek. You're in Denver. You want to see the Nuggets. Open up the Game Time app. You might find tickets for like $15, $20. That's almost nothing to be able to go and watch Nikola Jokic. Whoever stars in your town, they have great deals, and they have that all-in pricing icon right at the top right where you just click on that. No hidden fees, no nothing. You're going to know exactly what your checkout price is. They make it very easy to buy, and they have those flash deals. Well, all of a sudden, right before tip-off, prices will drop. You'll be able to snag really cheap tickets. It's definitely the way to buy tickets in the year 2024. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ALLNBA for $20 off your first purchase. You could probably go to a Nuggets game for $20. And you get $20 off your first purchase. That's like a free Nuggets game. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code ALLNBA, ALLNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Legs, there was another great game in the association last night, and that was, of course, the rookie phenom, Victor Wembanyama, taking on the two-time MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And it lived up to the hype. This was one that could have gone either way, but this was a great game. Unlike the Nuggets one, which was a great finish, this was a great game, quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's a lot of different angles you could take on this. Is it Milwaukee's bad defense? Is it Wembanyama doing spectacular things? Is it the way that this game closed? Where do you want to start with this specific game?
All right, so first, the main reason I wanted to watch this game at all was because I wanted to see, let's get a progress report on Victor Wembanyama now. With all the hype early, and we were watching him so much at the beginning because you were just dying to see, like, what does this look like in an actual NBA game? And then, they were so bad right off the bat that, okay, got a pretty good idea what that looks like. Now we got a lot of other teams we got to go cover. I'll get back to them later. And I've watched some, but not like intently watching specifically to see a guy's development like I did last night. Turns out there are a lot more reasons that I'm interested in this game now that it actually took place and played out. All right, let's start. We'll get to Wembanyama in a second. Yeah. Let's start with the Bucks. I'm concerned about the Bucks, man. I'm concerned. Like their lack of urgency defensively is starting to become glaring. And it's a variety of reasons. And I talked about this the other day against the Pacers. That's a bad matchup for them specifically because they're bigger, they're a little bit slower of foot. They're going to do better against teams that can isolate a little bit more, where they have bigger guys that can do a better job of guarding one-on-one. The Pacers are a bad matchup, but San Antonio shouldn't be. San Antonio's averaging 111 points a game, which in my era might have led the league. In this era, you're 13th in the Western Conference in scoring per game, 111 points. And yet they kind of did what they wanted to do. And one thing that stood out to me a lot was, man, Damian Lillard was a guy in Portland that put up big numbers, and you kind of didn't pay attention to the other end of the floor because you knew he was carrying the entire weight of the team for the most part, and he was kind of wowing you with these spectacular offensive bursts and displays, and he's still capable of doing those, and he played pretty well offensively last night. But, man, is it a drop-off from Jrue Holiday defensively. It's it's a totally different mentality at the point of attack. I mean, Jrue Holiday is picking you up right over half court, and he's chesting you up, and he's physical, and he's bumping you and turning you, and he's getting his top leg over screens, and he's raking on bigger guys when they drive on him, and like all this stuff that you notice over the course of the game, taking charges. Damian Lillard is not really going to do a whole lot of any of those things. He's going to outplay you offensively, and he's going to give you basically a minimal one effort on the defensive end of the floor. But if you're asking him to chase or you're asking for multiple efforts, or you're asking to fight over screens, those kinds of things, that's not going to be his game. And I'm not putting it all on him because I think their team overall has been really bad defensively. And it really jumped out to me last night, the success that San Antonio was having offensively against this team. And it's now becoming this trend. We're talking about this a lot with the Bucks. So I guess that's the first place that I wanted to start with this game before we get into Victor is, man, are you starting to get a little bit concerned about the Bucks, particularly when you compare them to Boston and when you compare them to Denver? And I think those are the two teams that you really got to use as a barometer for the Bucks. They're expecting to win a championship. Those are the two teams I think right now that you'd have to gauge yourself against. They can't do the things defensively that those two teams can do.
Every time we talk about the Bucks, we talk about this point of attack defense, their lackadaisical, effort on defense, how they just doesn't seem to be too much of a concern. And every time we do, we get people, that'll comment and say, "Hey, you guys are really hard on a team that's 25-10, one of the best records in all of the NBA." And I think that's a fair comment, but we're also looking at the Bucks through the lens of they have one goal. Their goal is not to be one of the top teams. Their goal is to win a championship. And the clock is ticking because we know that there's only so much time. Your point about Damian Lillard, this has been a big thing for me for years now. And part of it is because I watched Denver go up against Damian Lillard's Portland Trailblazers team a couple years back, a very, very, very shorthanded Nuggets team, go up against them and get the win. And I thought it was just so easy to score on them in the playoffs. And when you watch Dame, I think there's this thought of the Bucks will be better when it matters defensively. I just don't know. Because to your point, Damian Lillard, it's both focus and effort, but I think it's also just ability. Can they be a good defensive team if he is on the court? Or they have a lot of good defenders around him, and when you talk about the front court, but is Dame bad enough that you can't be good? Or is it really just the Beasley? They have to find the right combination of guys around him.
Man, here's the thing. I think Damian Lillard thought when he went to Milwaukee and he seemed a little bit shocked that he wasn't in Miami at first. And, we were kind of wondering, how's he going to take this? And I think he bought in pretty quickly. Why wouldn't you, man? You're playing next to Giannis. Right. You've got a chance to compete, right? You got a chance to go all the way with this group. Yeah. But I also thought he probably was thinking, okay, I got a lot of support around me defensively, right? And so, do you need to really push it on that end? And I don't think the support has been as good, honestly, either. I don't think, right? Part of it is Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton was a really, really good on-the-ball defender. He could guard guards. He could guard any high-scoring wing in the league and do a more than reasonable job on them in a short isolation situation. And he's got length to get a contest up at the end of the shot. And he just slid his feet well, and he's strong. I think he's lost some lateral quickness. I think he's lost some of effectiveness. He doesn't pressure the ball as much. I don't think he's a big a factor on that end. I think that affects them. Giannis, can be spectacular whenever he wants to be. And talking about a guy that can turn it up defensively when he has to, he can. But I also think in watching them now, maybe some of the malaise of the regular season has kind of sunk in for Giannis Antetokounmpo too, right? Naturally, he's already won a title, and he knows that this is really all about a 2-month run later in the year. And I think in their mind, they're looking at one team, the Boston Celtics. I think it's going to be us and them in the end, and I'll be ready when that time comes. So there may be some nights in the regular season when he's not necessarily influencing the game to that extent. Brook Lopez, a great rim protector. Brook Lopez struggles sometimes when teams can really spread them out, and he's got to get carried from the rim and chase a little bit when they're moving the ball for 3-point shots. So I just think overall, I think that they've taken a step back. And so the support is not there for Lillard the way it would have been if he played on that team that Drew Holiday joined that won a championship. Right. I think there was more defensive support on that team than there is this team. And I think that makes it a little bit more like you notice Lillard more now with this group of guys on that end of the floor. And I'm just a little worried. Last night they gave up 28 fast break points. And look, that's a big deal. Teams, right? Because that's just the way the game is played now. No, the playoffs will slow down a little bit. I get it. But not to the extent that you think anymore. There's still going to be a lot of quick shots taken in the playoffs. And so if you're like a little bit, you're not stopping the ball as it's coming up the floor. Like the guys are really getting up the floor a long way before they meet any resistance. And then they're moving it, and you got bigger guys running back to the lane, and they're shooting threes early in transition. That's what happens. So I just noticed it last night. I just thought, man, You would think after what happened the other night with Indiana, like they'd come out in this game and they'd be able to suffocate this team, and they just weren't able to really get there. Give San Antonio
Yeah.
credit; they played really well, and Victor was the highlight of the night. But I was disappointed again in the Bucks defensively, and it's nitpicking them. And look, to your point about people saying, "Well, why are you guys so hard on them?" You know why? Because their standard is different. Its standard is different. So you do nitpick the teams at the top because you want to know, like, you want to let people know, like, here's what it's going to take for them to win it. And right now, I don't think their defense is good enough to do that.
Yeah. To your point about Middleton, he is coming on. Like the last handful of games, he's been in the 20-point zone. I think he's averaging about 20 over the last 7 games or so. So, and his shooting well, I think above 45% from 3. So he's on. I don't know if it's just a heater or if he's kind of getting a rhythm going, and that'll be big because I do think it's weird to call him an X factor because he used to be part of a big 3, but I think he's this X factor that if he gets it going, they become a much more dynamic team. Onto the other side though. Because as much as the Bucks, they pulled out the win, they got it done. And by the way, we didn't even mention Giannis: 44 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 19 to 28 shooting, and all of those points were spectacular. I don't know if he had a boring point; they were all of the spectacular variety, as he often does. He was sensational. But the other side, San Antonio is a 5-29 team. They have a worse differential, I believe, than the Detroit Pistons, and yet you watch them last night. You worry about a young team's confidence when they're losing. We talk about this with Detroit a lot. That was a team that went out and just fought and played with confidence. And Wembanyama in particular did not look like a guy that was going through, oh, we're going to lose, this or that. They punched all game. Devin Vassell was spectacular. But that team played with confidence. And that's what stood out to me about the Spurs last night.
Completely agree with that. Yeah, you're right about the point differential too. I mean, I think they've had 3 40-point losses already. And so, you just don't know necessarily on a given night what you're going to get. I think, look, this was a national game, a lot of hype. It was Giannis and Wembanyama, a lot of eyeballs on it. They clearly had a lot of adrenaline for that, and they played very well. And so it comes down to, the reason you're watching the Spurs, unless you're you live in San Antonio or you're a Spurs fan or season ticket holder, if you're like us, you want to see Victor Wembanyama, and you want to just see this is one of the most hyped players in the history of this league, and you want to see what is it progressing like. And last night, first half, I watched, and I'm kind of like, okay, it kind of looks like what I saw like a month ago, a little bit, kind of drifting a little bit offensively. They don't really run much for him. Wasn't really, you didn't really notice him a whole lot. And man, did he change that in the second half, because he had a handful of plays that were insane. Absolutely insane. I mean, the play that's on everybody's highlight is the open floor going behind his back, left to right, as Lillard,
you're right.
Lillard's back, right? Lillard kind of swiped at the ball, trying to come in there and get a steal and pick him from in front. He wraps it around his back like improvisationally. When Lillard makes that dodge at the ball, that alone is incredibly difficult to pull off for any player, okay? Much less a guy that big. And then dunks over Brook Lopez with 2 hands to finish that thing off. So that's the play that stands out, and that's kind of when you're like, oh my goodness. Like even the bench, who's probably knows how many of these kinds of plays they've seen in practice or whatever else, jumped off the bench. They're all mobbing each other because it was that absurd. But that wasn't my favorite Wembanyama play of the night, Adam.
Which one was?
It was the block on Giannis late in the game. Giannis was overwhelming them for like a 6-minute stretch. Like with the stuff he was doing in the paint with his pivoting and forceful finishes at the rim was just amazing. He tried again. He got Wembanyama deep, pinned him almost under the rim, goes up. He's gonna throw it down. And Wembanyama goes up and the replay was phenomenal because it was all ball, but it was also both hands were basically at the top of the square. And Giannis is not used to having that happen to him. And he blocks it. They go the other way. That was my favorite play of the night. He also had a huge 3 late in the game,
off the dribble.
Trail 3, right, that he bottomed out to tie the game. Earlier in the game, he threw one off the backboard to himself in the middle lane for a dunk. Like, you got the whole show. And he didn't disappoint me, man. This guy's transcendent, and you saw a lot of that in the second half.
He's the only guy I've ever seen that does a dunk from here. Like most people, they reach their hands up high, right, to dunk and they extend. He
Right,
like
right, right.
almost puts his head above the rim and then dunks downward. And he does it a lot. And the one you're talking about behind the back, that was one of those. The one where he threw it off the backboard to himself. He didn't extend. It's weird. But we've talked about the last time we talked about Wemby, we said that his idols were Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo. This was
Yeah.
the first game where I can see why those are good models for him. He's somewhere in between those guys. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, I don't like to overhype guys and try to say he's going to be both of those guys combined, but you can see that the type of player he can become, he's got the shot. That 3-pointer you're talking about was off the dribble, going left, pick and roll. He read that the defense was going under and he kind of perfectly stepped into it and knocked it down. It was a beautiful 3-point shot that it looks like a thing you could do for him. Like that could be a weapon. He's a pick and roll, pull up 3-point shooter. And then in the open court, the Euro steps, the behind the backs and stuff, that reminds you of a Giannis. So last night was the first night where I watched it and I was like, you know what? You need to add the strength. There's a lot of stuff he's got to add, but I can see him becoming more of this on-ball player. And that's the development, I think, for me, is we saw little flashes of that, but it felt almost like novelty. Last night, he did it consistent enough, especially in the second half, where I'm like, you know what? Give it some years of seasoning, and I could see him having a Giannis-like rise where it's like he doesn't just do that sometimes. That's the bread and butter. He can be a guy with the ball in his hands.
I like that. And I think when I saw him early, and one of the things they kept showing was him handling the ball, whether it was highlights from him, right, before he came over, to the States. And you're going, wow, man, look at this guy put it down between his legs and do all this stuff. And then I saw him in Vegas try that a little bit. He got ripped a couple times. And I'm saying, like, that's going to take time. At this level, to be able to be that long and handle the ball in a tight window against this level of athlete with this kind of quickness is going to be difficult. And you don't see him playing with the ball as much as he did early in the year. The good news is, even though he's so thin, he has functional strength against contact when he drives, better than he looks like he should. He had another play last night where he caught the ball in the right wing and he drove into the middle lane and the ball never touched his right hand. He had it in his left. He had like contact. I don't remember who was guarding him, all up and down the right side of his body. And he just took the ball off the floor with one hand in his left, sort of cradled it and shot a left-handed scoop finger roll while he was being hit on the right side of his body, and he never really got knocked off balance. So he is super thin, obviously. He's wiry strong, though, and he is able to play through some of the contact on his drive so that his shots stay on balance, and they're very soft off the glass. Like, he's got an amazing touch when he goes full speed at the rim. He's going to be the complete package offensively. His shooting right now, early on, that's like all he wanted to do. Was get to the 3-point line because he didn't feel comfortable playing with contact. That's changed now. He mixes it up a lot more than he used to, and he's going to the rim more and finishing. He can still shoot the three. He makes free throws for the most part when he gets to the line. He's got the complete package, man, and it was really fun to see the show he and Giannis put on last night. It was special, and Giannis had great praise for him after the game. Directly right there on the court, they interviewed him in the postgame, and then his postgame press where he got asked again. He is super impressed with what he has seen early out of Victor Wembanyama, and then going up against him for the first time, he came away raving.
I have to imagine, like I just mentioned, he sees a little of himself in Wemby. He sees that mobility and some of the upside there. What about the other end of the floor? Evaluating where he was last time we talked about him about a month ago to now, what do you see from him defensively? Is he making progress there, and in what ways?
He's definitely making progress there. And I don't know if I could do this. I should have probably set this up earlier, but can we see this?
Is there a play? I don't know if we're going to be able to see it. Listen, maybe we'll put it on social though. We'll tweet it out. Send it to Emma.
I will. I took this picture. I'm going to send it to Emma right now so you can get this up. I took this picture of a play that I watched. I rewound it and I froze it in a certain place. And this is a picture of Victor Wembanyama was on defensively looking at the other end of the floor. He's on the left side of the court. The ball went over to the right block. Victor Wembanyama ran over there in like a double team mode. got both feet outside the lane on that side of the court. The ball got reversed to Brook Lopez on the opposite wing and then over to the corner for a 3-point shot. I believe it was Connaughton. And yeah, it's Pat Connaughton. So this picture shows Brook Lopez has the ball. Pat Connaughton is like this, hands ready, waiting on the pass in the corner on the right side of the floor. Victor Wembanyama, when I took this picture, has both feet outside the lane on the opposite side of the floor. Look at Victor Wembanyama.
My goodness.
This ball is going to get reversed to Pat Connaughton, and Victor Wembanyama blocked it.
Yeah.
Now,
blocked it good too. Like
he gets a fingertip on it and ends up being an air ball. Think about what I'm saying here. This ball gets passed directly to Connaughton. I mean, I remember watching Zion Williamson do this at Duke to DeAndre Hunter. They're playing University of Virginia, almost the exact same scenario, except that time Hunter went to shoot it and Zion blocked it into the crowd about 10 rows back, like punched it practically. This one, Wemby stretched out and just got a fingertip. But the fact that he got anywhere near the ball, like Pat Connaughton, I know I'm a shooter. If somebody did that to me when they were that far away when I caught the ball, that would be like unnerving. Like that there's a thing on the court that can do that because there's no way he should have gotten over here. That's the kind of play. I don't know there's another guy in the league that can do that, man. Maybe Giannis can make that play. That's about it. Because you have to move quickly, you have to have great stride, and then you have to time it perfectly. And so he has all of those instincts with these physical dimensions to do things defensively that, quite frankly, when he gets comfortable 2-3 years in the league and adds some strength, I think he's going to be able to do things defensively in this league that nobody else can do.
Yeah. I wonder, the same way rim protection becomes rim deterrence and guys are afraid to go into the rim, I wonder if you can have an effect like this where no matter how far away he is, as a shooter, you're thinking like, here he's coming. He closes the gap so much. I wonder if he could have that to him. But he really impressed me last night. That was a great game. That was a great performance from him. And you do see one of the things we've raved about Chet a lot, and for good reason. Chet has been incredible. One of the things I love about Chet is his competitiveness, his confidence, and his IQ. He's just so far ahead, in my opinion, in those three areas for a rookie. And it's a big reason why the Thunder are so good. I saw those things, maybe not the IQ part from Wembanyama. It wasn't that it was bad. It wasn't particularly, outstanding in my opinion last night, although he did have a back cut that was huge. Do you remember the back cut he had? I think coming off a pin down from the corner.
Yes.
And then he back cuts and gets to me, that's a play that you think if a guy 6'11" makes that play, you're impressed, but 7'4", you're like, oh my God, man, that's insane. But
he's got look. There's so much room for growth as he continues to gain. I think core strength and lower body strength where he catches the ball, his ability to shoot over the top of people without having to dribble. Like there's just so much more there to come. His handle, he will get more comfortable using it functionally to get where he needs to go rather than just kind of showing off for a guy that big dribbling, actually using it to get there. By the way, he also had in the game, I don't know if you noticed it, and I only saw it once. I don't know if he did it more. He did a Luke Cornett last night. Did you see him do a Luke Cornett?
Yeah, I did actually.
He was in the lane, and he just jumped up in the air, and he was like 15 feet away from the shooter. And he just jumped up and down in one place, and I'm like, man, if anybody's going to pull that off more effectively, Luke Cornett, it'd be Victor Wembanyama. I can't imagine what that would look like if you're shooting a ball, and he just jumps up and down in one place. So he did that as well. Look, it was just a fun night, but it was also a productive night, and it wasn't just a bunch of highlights, and they lose by 20. I mean, the fact that he was making big plays down the stretch, going up against Giannis, who was sensational. I'm glad they gave us that night because it made it for a perfect doubleheader because of what we got right after.
We have some breaking news that's pertinent to something we talked about earlier in the show. Emma, you have this ready to pull up. Shams Charania just tweeted that after sitting the final 18 minutes of the Nuggets loss, Warriors forward Jonathan Kuminga has lost faith in Steve Kerr and no longer believes that Kerr will allow him to reach his full potential, sources say. Now, this is short of a trade demand. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but this is just bad. You knew that loss was painful for the Warriors, and they've lost a couple, and now when's Draymond coming back? Does Draymond bring tension back? I think Kuminga's played better with Draymond not there, which is something when Draymond comes back, I was most curious to see how does it affect Kuminga. But Draymond's not even back, and Kuminga seems like he's out. This isn't quite a trade demand, but it is hinting at hey man, I no longer believe in the guy that is leading me. What do you make of that report that just dropped?
Listen, first of all, I completely, if that's true, and that's what Jonathan Kuminga is telling people or has articulated to anybody, and Shams is
Right.
reporting that. First of all, I agree with Jonathan Kuminga. And I've been saying that about Jonathan Kuminga. Now, look, some of it's been
Yeah,
on
you're his
him,
guy.
but I've said from the beginning, Steve Kerr loses faith in him quickly.
Yep.
And Steve Kerr just said 2 weeks ago, maybe, or maybe a week ago, this is the best stretch Jonathan Kuminga has had for us. So, and he had 16 again last night very efficiently. But as each of the last two seasons, the regular season was one thing, and then the late regular season into the postseason was a completely different thing for Jonathan Kuminga. And as a
Right.
young player, you got to, look, I think early you kind of go, okay, well, here's what it is. I'm a rookie or I'm a second-year player, and it is what it is. And you're kind of waiting your turn. I think he feels like, you know what, man, my time has come. My turn is here now. And like I should be on the floor to finish these games. And look, he's probably saying to himself, if I'm playing this well right now, this is the best I've played, and actually had a good game tonight. It wasn't like he had a bad game last night. And I sit the last 18 minutes of the game, and Draymond Green is about to come back. Well, when am I ever going to be like a breakthrough here where I'm a 30-minute a night player and I'm entrusted to close games so I can really grow and reach my potential? I'm actually kind of surprised it took Jonathan Kuminga this long to feel this way, if that's genuinely how he feels. Now, we'll see. Now that this is out there for public consumption, there will be more on this from the Warriors, from Kuminga, maybe from his agent. We'll see how this plays out, because it might be a situation where now they dial it back, or the Warriors make sure it's dialed back, or whatever it may be, or not, or it goes the other way. And now you start to hear about Jonathan Kuminga wants out by the trading deadline. I am surprised it took him this long, because I've been saying it. He goes through these stretches where it seems like he's playing pretty well, and then he just disappears. It's very, very, very short leash with him. And I think he's feeling like, hey, man, and Draymond's about to come back. Rumors are he's going to be back in the building soon, and who knows. So then
That's
where does
tension.
that leave me then?
Tension. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
I'm not surprised by that at all. If that's true, and I have no reason to doubt it, I am not surprised by that. I'm going to be very curious to see where this goes, and very curious to see what the market may be for Jonathan Kuminga if this ends up getting to that point over the next month.
well, I think it's safe to say the Warriors lost the week. They were one of the losers of the week, but every week on this show on Friday, to get us into the weekend, we ask who won the week. So let's get into it. Who won the week? This is, of course, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code ALLNBA. Every week it's presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm going to give you a couple nominees, and then we'll get to your pick. But the Pelicans, we talked about them twice on the show this week. 3-0, all blowout wins over the Lakers, the Nets, and the Timberwolves in Minnesota, by the way. All three of those games very impressive because they were not close. You had the Pacers that go 3-0 this week with wins over the Knicks, Bucks, and Bucks again in Milwaukee. That was huge, kind of getting back on track for them, but also just owning the Bucks and getting in their head. The Utah Jazz, also the other team that go 3-0 this week, kind of a shocker. And Walker Kessler in particular was a plus 60 over the course of 3 games, had 4 blocks per game. He's been really coming on strong. And then, of course, Jokic, a game winner, 19 of 23 over the last 3 games for Jokic. He's not missing shots anymore. He's decided just to make shots this year. Those are all nominees. Who did you nominate for your Who Won the Week?
So since the last time we did this, there was some big news, and it technically is in the last week. It's OG Anunoby going to the Knicks. My big winner is the Knicks, and you might even say Anunoby, because I think this is where he wanted to be. I don't think this trade goes down unless the Knicks have an assurance that they're going to re-sign him. He's going to opt out. He's making 19. He's going to opt out of that. I'll probably make 30 plus on a new deal, probably 4 or 5 years is my guess. And I wasn't a huge believer that the Brunson, Randall, Barrett trio was enough. And look, RJ Barrett can get his own shot a little bit better than OG Anunoby can. Sure. But OG Anunoby is going to be a much more consistent open three-point shooter, and playing off of Brunson and Randall, that you need that. And then his defensive prowess and what he can do defensively, and the versatility he's going to give you, the different lineups you can play, because he can guard 4s and 5s because he's that strong.
Right.
And of course guard anybody on the perimeter. I think this is a big win for the Knicks. And they also had two good wins, Minnesota
Yep.
and Chicago. Since Anunoby's been inserted into the starting lineup. So I
Right.
think the big winner is the Knicks for pulling off that trade. Some people think that the Raptors got a lot back with Barrett and Quickly and a pick. That's fine, and that's a pretty good haul for OG Anunoby. But this to me moves the needle a little bit for the Knicks, and I don't know that I was going to feel that way if they stood pat or they had to go into the postseason with RJ Barrett.
Let's take a look at this trade, though, and how it went down, because you're right, OG Anunoby, the centerpiece. You also get Precious Achiuwa and Malachi Flynn. I don't think they move the needle. And then for the Raptors, you get two guys. You get RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. And Quickly, by the way, has had two very good games since going over to Toronto. I feel like this is something of a win-win. I mean, time will tell, but I do feel like this is something of both teams, I think, made moves that make sense. I'm with you on OG Anunoby going to the Knicks. I'm very intrigued by them. I don't love Randall. I think you have two of a big three. Like I like Brunson and I like OG. I like Mitchell Robinson. And you know who actually has really been impressive? Isaiah Hartenstein. Since being inserted as a starter and getting more minutes, he's been very impressive. I think they have two of their three main pieces. I still don't love Randall, but I'm curious to see where you go there. But if you talk about Toronto, where are they going? I think you're still probably moving on from Pascal Siakam at some point, probably some point soon. But you look at Quickly and his fit with Scotty Barnes, and I'm intrigued. We've seen this mold. A do-it-all wing who can pass, who can score, who has the ball in his hands, is something of a creator. And then you put a quick point guard alongside him. There's a little bit of Luka and Kyrie or LeBron and Kyrie. We've seen this mold. This is a version of that, an iteration of it. And I at least see the vision. I'm intrigued to see what happens with Quickly and Scotty Barnes as if they form something of a duo.
Well, I think this is, and it maybe, Quickly probably loved being in New York and playing in the Garden. Right now, the Garden's pretty electric, and that's an incredible environment. But he knows this is a better opportunity for him. He's going to get more consistent run, more consistent shots on a nightly basis. The guy can flat out score. I mean, he's a very talented offensive player, and he'll go much further toward reaching his potential in Toronto than he would have in New York. There's no doubt about it. The thing that I like about this one last point for the Knicks, I think the Knicks, and this is part of it, particularly knowing Tom Thibodeau and how he's looking at what they're going to have to do if they want to be serious about contending or getting in the mix with those top teams. You just added a guy that's going to be able to guard Tatum a lot better than what you had. Jaylen Brown, Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton. If he has to switch on to a Giannis, can do a more than reasonable job. He can guard a Tyrese Maxey. He can guard these players. Now, he's not going to do much with Embiid, but there's not a lot of guys that are going to do much with Embiid anyway, if you're 6'7". But the versatility of what he gives, and look, this isn't a shutdown league anymore where this guy's going to lock these guys up. It's all about just percentage-wise limiting their effectiveness and their efficiency. It's all it is. Over the course of a game, over the course of a series, is it just he's more able to affect those guys than what they had. And there's no question about that. And I think that, for me, puts them a little bit more like, okay, this is going to be interesting now, whoever would get the Knicks, potentially if it ended up being a second-round series, or who knows, it might be a first-round series. You don't know where the Knicks are going to finish. They might get Philly in the first round or something like that. But it's going to be much more interesting, I think, having a guy like Anunoby guard those elite players.
I think the swing guy for them, it's one of my favorite players, is Quentin Grimes. And Tibbs is not really, it doesn't seem like he fully trusts Grimes. Grimes doesn't play a ton of minutes, but I'm curious. This opens up opportunity for him to play a little bit more. His minutes by a lot, despite winning the game. So I'm kind of curious to see if this is a shot in the arm for Grimes, or if he's maybe on the way out the door for them this offseason. All right, let's get in real quickly before we get out of here. Let's just look at this weekend, because there are some very good games this weekend, and I just want to run through them real quick. On Friday, there's a full slate tonight, Legs. Atlanta at Indiana. I mentioned that Atlanta, since getting Jalen Johnson back, has been on a little bit of a run. Indiana's on a little bit of a run. This to me is a big game for both teams to kind of see if they is this run real. So I'm intrigued by that one.
Most importantly, I think Emma, who's our betting expert, if you want to double your money, I think Emma's going to take the over in that game. I think I'd take the over. I don't know what the number is, but I'm taking the over in Atlanta, Indiana.
It's probably 300 combined points, and you still take the under on it. Knicks at Philadelphia. The new look Knicks go into Philly. Very tough place to play. That should be a great measuring stick for this new Knicks team to kind of see what they get there. That'll be a great one. Minnesota's at Houston. It's a battle of two big front courts. I like that one. Minnesota's been sliding a little bit lately, so can they get a road win and stabilize? The Clippers and Pelicans, man, that might be the game of Friday night. Look at all these good games. Clippers at Pelicans. What do you predict there?
Yeah, that's the one I have circled for the whole weekend. That's the one I want to see, as well as the Clippers have been playing, New Orleans as well. Look, we keep wondering, like, who's the clear true challenger to Denver in the Western Conference. Right. We've talked a lot about Minnesota and OKC, but very little playoff history of winning there with those groups. You look at some of these other talented teams, man. The Clippers and Pelicans are right there in the mix with the talent that they have. So I'm dying to see that matchup. Hopefully everybody suits up because I want to see them at full strength.
Orlando is in Denver. Orlando rounding out a 4-game Western road trip. Denver coming on a second night of a back-to-back. So this is a fatigue off. Orlando's a little banged up, so maybe this game won't be as great. But, I mean, that's two good teams. Miami is at Phoenix, another one. Like, Miami is just the wrecking ball of these types of teams. So I'm very curious to see if Miami can go in and cause a little panic amongst the Phoenix Suns. What do you think of that matchup?
Yeah, that's gonna be fascinating. It's funny. We've really have not given the Heat a whole lot of attention this year. Nobody has, and yet here they are, man. They're playing great basketball right now.
I love them.
They make people's lives miserable with how hard they play and how prepared they are. You're not going to catch them unprepared or flat. They play hard. They might have nights where they don't shoot the ball well, and you get them, but it's not going to be their undoing by their lack of preparation. And you look up at the end of the day, Adam, like it's like, wow, will Miami be the team that rises from the ashes in the Eastern Conference and make it all the way back? We might get a repeat matchup in the NBA Finals, and we barely talked about the Heat all year. That's how well they're playing right now. So that's another really good barometer game for Miami to see how their defense stacks up against Phoenix's offense.
Legs, I'm calling it. We have our first must-win game of the year. Truly must-win. Not like it would be good to stop the bleeding. Memphis has 2 games this weekend. Tonight at LA for the Lakers, and on Sunday they are in Phoenix for the Suns. Those are 2 teams that are within striking distance of them in the standings, but more to the point, Memphis is 5.5 games out. You can chop into that 2 times this weekend with wins, but if you lose one or both, now you're talking about 7.5 games out. Like, come on, at some point the door just closes. Yeah, so Memphis tonight has a big 2-gamer.
Yeah. It got a little late early for them, so you can't go one step forward, one step back if you're Memphis, right? You get opportunities like that, you got to get them. Although I will say, I thought you were going to say a different game for the must-win, because I see another must-win on the slate, and I don't know if it might be tonight, tomorrow night. Golden State, must-win against Detroit. Do you agree with that? That's a must-win for Golden State.
You're right that I didn't have this one there.
Now, wait till if he sits the last 10 minutes, they lose to the Pistons. You got a full-fledged 5-alarm fire.
Man.
Golden State has to beat the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. Toronto, Sacramento tonight. You've also got Boston, Indiana tomorrow. Milwaukee and Houston's a great one. New Orleans and Sacramento. In Sacramento, that's another great one. Look at all those good games, man. And then Lakers Clippers is always a fun one. You get that one this weekend. So I don't know what I just rattled off there. 12 games roughly this weekend that I'm excited about. I'm telling you, it's starting to heat up for us in the NBA. Legs, great week of shows, man. Some great games in the NBA, some great shows on the All-NBA show.
Can't wait to recap the weekend on Monday. Looking forward to it.
Everybody, have yourselves a great weekend. Do us a favor and hit that like button. We're over 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you to everybody that has been subscribing and growing this show. Do us that favor. Leave us a like on the way out.
All city like the mayor.